Season 6 PTR is in a couple days, and I've put together about 10 planners of builds that I want to try pretty early on in the PTR. Now keep in mind that this stuff has not been tested. We're just looking at data mined information, and some of the stuff in the planner seems to possibly be incorrect or bugged as well. So we're not going to really know what's going on with these builds until obviously the PTR drops so we can play them. And these will be iterated on as I actually get to play the builds. There's not going to be any gameplay in this video. We're just going to quickly go over the highlights of each build and some things that have changed, new items, reworks to items in Paragon, and things like that. All of these planners will be linked in the info section of this video. So let's get right into it. So first build is going to be Pure Landslide. So kind of what I'm looking at with Pure Landslide is to try to lean even more into the Overpower portion of it because, I mean, as you guys saw in Season 5, I think the highest Overpower I ever saw was like 10 billion, and we have some changes to some items to get more Overpowers. So I want to try to lean more towards that. The main big change here is going to be the reworked Hunter's Zenith. So this reads, every 30 seconds you spend in an animal form, your next core skill is guaranteed to overpower and critically strike and deal 60% increased damage. And then casting a shape-shifting skill reduces this timer by 1 second or 2 seconds if it changes you to a new animal form. So we just get another way to guarantee overpowers with this. I'm dropping the Ring of Starless Skies to try to run it. We'll see how it goes. I mean, just the standard Pure Landslide from last season will be totally fine and still be very, very good and strong. But I definitely want to lean more towards that. I want to try Banished Lord's Talisman. So my reasoning with even trying this is that from the looks of the data mine, they actually nerfed how many ranks of passives you can get on your amulet now. So the legendary amulets look to be a little bit worse. Probably still going to be better overall, but I definitely want to try leaning really into the overpower side of this build and see how it feels to play. Chances are we go towards a legendary amulet in the end, though. One other crazy new item is the Shroud of False Death, new mythic chess piece. So this gives +1 to all passives. So, I mean, just think about that. All the damage multiplier passives, all the damage reduction passives, all that stuff is pretty insane. And also, talking about overpowers, we should be getting an extra rank to provocation, which means this is going to be 8 seconds instead of 12. Now, for the Paragon boards, keep in mind that this is a pretty quick pass that I made on making these new Paragon boards. What they did here is they changed it so that we have 328 points now once we have reached max level and got all of our Paragon points. And you can only use 5 boards, including your starter board. It's definitely going to be much different when building Paragon boards. You're able to effectively get all of the rare and magic nodes that you want pretty much on every one of those boards. And then we also have a couple new glyphs. So first one here is Headhunter. So this gives you damage multiplier, increased damage, and then damage versus elites, but then it also buffs all the normal nodes within range. So on this starter board, I'm getting all of the willpower within the range, and that's getting increased by what it says is 624%. We'll see how good that actually ends up being if it really is 624%. I mean, it's a ton of willpower. In a overpower build especially, seems to be very strong. Eliminator is the same way. Let's see, where's that at? Here it is. So again, we get damage multipliers versus elites, and then just buffing all the willpower within range. I pretty much made all of these planners mostly just offensive. I don't really have too many DR glyphs in here. We'll have to play the new season and see how the damage feels and the damage reduction feels. Good chance that these boards get changed up a bit and we add some of the damage reduction glyphs in if we need it. All right, so next up we have the new skill Stone Burst. You gather stones beneath your enemies, then detonate them, dealing damage. And this is a channeled core nature magic earth skill. Channeling deals 20% increased damage and increases the size of the affected area over the duration of the channel until it gets to a certain point, then explodes. With the modifiers, Stoneburst's final explosion damage is increased by 25% within the initial radius, so the start of the channel. And then Stoneburst costs 66% more spirit, and its final explosion deals 50% more damage. Then we've got a new unique that goes along with this. So this reads, while channeling Stone Burst and for 2 seconds afterwards, you gain 15% damage reduction. And then Stone Burst's final explosion deals increased damage, and that's further increased for each size increase. And we've also got a new aspect to go along with this as well. Stone Burst deals 35% increased damage, and when cast at or above 75 spirit, it is immediately at its maximum size. I mean, on paper, I don't think that Stone Burst is going to be able to compete with the other top-end Druid builds for this next season, at least in this current iteration. I mean, we'll have to play it and see. At least just looking at it, it doesn't look like it's going to be insane. I think it'll be a pretty decent skill, though, and it'll probably be pretty fun to play. But kind of my thinking here is that, we're increasing the spirit cost so much, and we want to be casting Stone Burst above 75 spirit. So I'm going to start out just trying to run it with the Mjolnir Ring and Cataclysm so that we have unlimited spirit. So we don't have to worry about our spirit costs or anything like that. We'll basically just always be above 75 spirit, and that extra spirit cost from the modifier won't even matter. And, more than likely just run it as a bear with Vasili's Prayer, so we can get all those shape-shifting and bear modifiers as well. And then kind of what I'm thinking is running the new Wildheart Hunger boots. So these have been changed. So they only work with Bestial Rampage now. But if this adds 50% to Bestial Rampage, kind of like the Insatiable Fury chest does for Ursine Strength, or Mad Wolf's Glee does for Lupin Ferocity, then they could potentially be pretty good. I mean, adding 50% attack speed and 50% damage seems pretty nuts. And, again, what I'm kind of thinking is trying to max attack speed out here and go through that channel of the Stone Burst as quickly as possible. All right, next up, we've got good old Pulverize. Not a ton of big changes to Pulverize, at least as far as how the build will play. The big thing, though, here again is that Hunter's Zenith getting another source of guaranteed overpowers. Seems like it should be very, very strong for Pulverize. The one other big change that we're getting as well is we're actually getting a good Pulverize temper now. So you have a chance for Pulverize to hit twice. So, I mean, Pulverize will be a lot stronger than it was in Season 5. Is it enough to make it like a top-tier build? I don't think so. Pulverize should feel really good for speed farming, like it always has. You get really crazy AoE and distance on your Pulverize, and, just running through, like, speed pits and speed nightmare dungeons. Now that they've kind of flip-flopped that, you're going to be doing nightmare dungeons for your masterworking materials, and then in pits, you're upgrading your glyphs, and so for speed pit runs, I would think that Pulverize would be pretty good for that. All right, next up we have Zoo Companions. So this one, I'm trying to go more for the Zoo gameplay style here, more than only focusing on the wolves, although the werewolves are going to be the majority of your damage. But we got a few pretty cool new changes to this. So first one we'll go over real quick here is the Stormcrow's Runic Gloves. This is a new aspect. Ravens now deal lightning damage, and this is increased by 50%. And then Raven's active, it deals its full damage in half the time, and enemies inside it are stunned. I don't know if this is going to really be worth running. It may just be better to run an aspect here that just buffs your werewolves even more, gives them another multiplier. But I'm going to try that out to start, because I think it'll be a more fun play style than just focusing on the werewolves. And a couple other things we're getting a new key passive. So one with nature. Your companion skills each gain one additional companion and deal 50% increased damage, and then you gain the passive effect of ravens, wolves, and poison creeper. So I guess my thinking with that second line there is that, if you wanted to potentially drop poison creeper off of your bar, then you should still have all of the passive poison creepers coming up and poisoning things, and then also those, I would think, counting as additional companions for things like Shepherd's Aspect, giving you a damage multiplier per companion. For the time being, I'm leaving Poison Creeper on the bar, though. Maybe that changes. And then one other big change, we're getting a brand new Paragon board that's focused completely around companions. So the legendary node on that board, the board is called Untamed. The legendary node reads, casting a companion skill grants +4 ranks to your companion skills for 5 seconds. So it's like getting a Shaco for your companions. Possibly, the way this reads is that maybe this stacks and you can get +4 ranks to your companions every time you cast a companion skill, and that stacks up. I doubt that's the way it works, but the way that it reads, it's possible. So we'll have to see how that actually works once the PTR drops. But then you're also getting like crit damage, vulnerable damage here, resist, life, damage to crowd-controlled life, some companion cooldown reduction, companion damage here, damage reduction from elites, and then some lucky hit and willpower stuff here. And one other big change you're going to see in some of these builds is I've got a lot of debilitating roar going on, and this has a new modifier. You deal 15% increased damage while debilitating roar is active. All right, next up we have Shred. I don't think that Shred is going to be like some insane top tier build this season or anything like that, but I think it has enough changes that it might be a very, very solid speed farming build. So Hell Tides, Nightmare Dungeons, and Speed Pits, Shred could be pretty decent. Two of the big changes for Shred, we're getting a brand new aspect. And according to this, it's a utility aspect, so it can go on chest piece, pants, helmet. So it reads, Shred gains a 4th attack that hits all surrounding enemies, deals 60% increased damage, and knocks down enemies for 2 seconds. And then Shred is also finally getting a solid temper, so you have a chance for Shred to hit twice now. And, you know, Shred in general has pretty good damage modifiers. Unsatiated, which is great, and it gives you Spirit back when you kill an enemy with Shred. Retaliation's very solid now. We're running Ring of Starless Skies. You've got Changeling's Debt, which is worse on werewolf abilities than it is werebear, but still very good. And then you've got Blurred Beast as well. So next up we have Andariels Human Storm Slide. Kind of my thinking here with this is that we are getting a ton of new generic damage increases with this patch. So my hope here is that Andariels can be pretty solid on Druid now. So we do have a new aspect that I'm not sure that actually works or not, but the way this reads is while Grizzly Rage is active, skills that critically strike apply Rabies, and your poison damage is increased by 135%. So I'm hoping that second line, the way it reads, it sounds like it just increases all of your poison damage by 135%, even if it's not, you're not in Grizzly Rage, you're not applying Rabies. I think that's going to work. We'll have to see and test that. So that's one new big damage increase for poison for us if it works. And then also, like we talked about on the Paragon board, so you've got these new glyphs that just give all this willpower. And, you know, main stat willpower is going to be one of the better ways to scale something like Andariel's Visage. So I'm hoping this is going to help the cause a good bit. And then also on the skill tree, there's a bunch of just generic damage increases now. For instance, Catastrophe, 15% increased damage for 8 seconds after casting an ultimate skill. You've got Feral Aptitude, which is 18% increased damage. And then you have Backlash, 12% increased damage for 5 seconds after casting a defensive skill. So all of these things added together, I think that Andariels has a shot to actually scale. And not to mention, you know, running it with Landslide and Nature's Fury and the Lightning Strikes from Lightning Storm, you have insane amount of hits happening all the time, and really good lucky hit on all of those hits. So you should be able to proc Andariels constantly with that. So next we have Grizzly Rage Landslide Rabies. This is like very much just a template. I have no idea how this thing is actually going to play in practice and what percentages of certain things you're going to need to really make it work and make it feel good to play and stuff like that. But it's basically just based around Amulet of the Rabid Bear. Again, while Grizzly Rage is active, skills that critically strike apply Rabies, and then your poison damage is increased. I got to imagine that this means that, you know, if you hit with Landslide and it procs Lightning Storm, that every crit from that one cast will apply Rabies, and Rabies does stack. Or this is just absolute garbage, and it only applies Rabies one time per cast of anything, whether it crits a ton of times or not. I mean, in that case, it's just completely useless other than just, you know, buffing your poison damage like in the previous build with Andariels. But basically, it looks like the way you want to play this thing is you just want to be hitting a ridiculous amount of times, trying to get to a point where you're pretty much crit capped and every one of those hits is a crit, and you're just spreading Rabies just constantly, tons of times with every cast of whatever ability you're running. I think this could also probably work with potentially like a max attack speed tornado build as well. I don't think it would be as good as this, but I think it could probably work in that scenario too. All right, next up we have Hurricane. So pretty standard Hurricane build, but the big difference that we're seeing with this data mine is that they moved the Hurricane duration temper off of weapon. So now you can get this on boots, pants, gloves, chest piece, helmet, and your amulet. So I have no clue if there's some sort of cap on Hurricane duration at all or not. I doubt that there is. I don't think there has been a cap in the past. I think you could get like well over 100% on your weapon before. You know, this can be pretty insane. And you run it with the Hurricane aspect. Hurricane damage is increased by 41% each second while active. So, I mean, you can just think about that, like how much percentage increase we're getting to the duration of Hurricane here. That can stack up to a ridiculous point. And we're also getting a new temper for the weapon, chance for Hurricane to deal double damage. And masterworking this up, you can get it technically to 100%. I've only got 2 masterworks on here that gets it almost to 100%, but yeah. And, you know, it'd be pretty standard to what we're doing currently. You guarantee an overpower on your Hurricane, so you snapshot that overpower for the duration of the Hurricane, and you can also snapshot clarity for the crit chance and damage after casting companions as well. So you can pretty much get to a point where you're snapshotting a guaranteed overpower and a guaranteed crit, and then your Hurricane just lasts for a ridiculous amount of time. All right, so similar build, Overpower Cataclysm. I actually put a video out on this during the PTR for last season. This is when they first changed Cataclysm to actually be a decent skill. This is another one of those builds that I don't think is going to be like a top tier Druid build or anything like that, but can be a really, really smooth, easy way to speed farm, kind of like the Shred build that we talked about. But it works basically the same way as the Hurricane build. You want to snapshot your overpower for the Cataclysm and then just let it do its thing as you're running around. One kind of interesting thing that I've got in here is actually running Stone Burst as well, along with another new aspect that we got with Stone Burst. Stone Burst causes enemies to take 75% increased damage from your other skills for 5 seconds. So I wanted to try that out. I was trying to figure out a build that this would actually work in and feel decent to play, and I feel like this might be one of them. And, you know, one of kind of the interesting things about this patch too with ultimate skills is that you can actually get points in your ultimate skills now. So like, if you look at this, each point that you put in here is going to reduce the cooldown of Cataclysm, along with increasing its damage, obviously. So you can put 5 points in on the skill tree, and then we're getting another 4 points from the Harlequin Crest. All right, the last build is Boulder, and I haven't finished Boulder yet. I'm going to keep working on it today. I would say probably by around the time that you're watching this video, this will all be finished. This, I don't really have a lot of changes for. I don't think it's really going to be that much different. The one thing that they have said in the patch notes is that they're changing Boulder so that it doesn't knock back as much as it does currently on the live servers. So hopefully that'll make it feel better to play. I mean, at this point, they need to just make it so that Boulder, if a wall gets put up by an elite, Boulder just blasts right through the wall and it doesn't just, you know, kill your boulders. I really hope they do something along those lines. It's not like that would just make Boulder completely OP to a point where it's better than everything else. It still wouldn't be. But Boulder should be a strong build. It's very strong in Season 5 currently, has great single target damage. And I'm also thinking with Boulder that we probably lean a little bit more into the overpower side of things too. We're already kind of doing that with running Obsidian Slam and Provocation. So maybe we throw Hunter Zenith in here too to get even more overpowers. All right, guys. So I think that'll about wrap it up. Again, keep in mind, this is all kind of preliminary planners for all these builds. I'm going to iterate on these things. I've only made like one real pass on the Paragon boards. Paragon is like brand new with this PTR. It's completely different than it was before. So I need to go through there and, make sure the boards are decently efficient. I'm sure there's mistakes here and there and pathing that could be better and stuff like that. And then as I actually get to play the builds and somewhat finalize them, then I'll put out updates. And keep in mind, too, that we're not going to have the rune words immediately. As those are added into the planner and we actually get them on the PTR, I think they said that, I believe that they said that the runes are going to be in like a few days after the PTR starts. Somebody can correct me on that if I'm wrong. I don't think we're going to have them day one on Wednesday. Then we'll test those out and figure out what makes the most sense for each individual build. And we're going to be able to run basically 2 different rune words per build. That's going to be the cap on the runes. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you're playing the PTR, have a good time, man. Feel free to hit me up in the comments once the PTR starts and you find anything interesting, or you just want to have discussion about various builds. So I'll see you next time.